renovation is a $5 million project. It is proceeding on schedule. That will be completed this winter. That residence hall will open again for students in the fall of next year. Once that is completed, we will begin doing a renovation to Alumni Tower, and then we'll progress through the Manon complex. We're following an institutional housing master plan that was developed 2 years ago with the help of consultants. Our goal is to provide housing that is up-to-date, affordable, and with the kinds of amenities that young people today would like to have. It'll make a difference in attracting students to live on our campus. If you've driven in the area of Regents Hall up in the housing area, I hope you've seen the big sign that we've placed up there recently that identifies the location of the new $30 million Student Activities Center, Student Wellness Center. The first year I was here in the spring of '05, the students caucused in the conference room in my office and said, we believe we deserve to have a recreation and wellness facility that's as good as any of the other institutions in Kentucky across this country. And I said, I agree with you. We were stalled the first year because the General Assembly couldn't quite get its act together. The governor vetoed a project, and then we were in a holding mode. Well, this past session, the General Assembly fully supported the funding for that, and the governor signed it. This will be paid for by agency bonds funded by student fees. The students are going to pay for it, but it'll be available, of course, to faculty and staff as well as our students. The planning is well underway for that project. We did not stop, even though we were stalled by legislative inactivity. We've been working with an architectural firm, Hastings and Chevetta, the same group that has designed the Space Science Center, and the work for this new facility is well underway. We expect to let bids in the spring of '09 and break ground sometime in probably by the fall of '09. Some of the best news, though, for us recently related to capital project has to do with bid openings. You're aware, those of you that have been here, that the university received in the last biennial budget $24 million to build a new Center for Health Education and Research. This is a partnership between Morehead State University, St. Clair Regional Medical Center, and the University of Kentucky, funded by state dollars with an additional $1.5 million from the federal government through an EDA grant. This facility has the promise of transforming healthcare in our region, solidifying deep partnerships we have with the other two institutions, and making our university a focal point for really impressive things related to health education in this region. In fact, next Wednesday on the 20th, we will have a groundbreaking ceremony on the campus of St. Clair across 2nd Street, and we would invite any of you that would like to come to that at 1:30 to be supportive of that activity. I firmly believe that the Center for Health Education and Research will change the face of medicine and medical education in East Kentucky. What it will provide is a venue for interprofessional education, a place where our nurses, our imaging science folks, nurse practitioners, physician's assistant, residents, physicians, doctors, and nurses will work together to better understand how we work for the benefit of patients. What a marvelous idea, because in fact, that's what really happens in any healthcare setting, and that'll happen on our campus. For those of you that weren't here this summer, you may not have caught this in the newspaper, but President Lee Todd from the University of Kentucky was here with Dr. Jay Perman, the Dean of Medicine, Dr. Michael Karff, the Vice President for Health Sciences at UK, and announced that the UK College of Medicine was expanding the number of students that they would accept into their medical school by 10 students, and these 10 students will be specifically recruited into rural medicine. They're going after young people that not only want to become doctors, but doctors in rural communities. And we know from research, Pikeville College is an excellent example, that if you can attract students from communities, particularly rural communities, that want to learn how to become doctors and do it in a rural setting, you have a much greater chance of success or keeping them in the community once they graduate and go into practice in a rural community. We are very, very excited about that. What will happen is the group they recruited this fall will do their first 2 years in Lexington, and then we will open the new facility in the fall of 2010, and they'll do their second 2 years, which are the clinical years in medical school, at St. Clair Regional Medical Center in our community in Morehead, Kentucky. How exciting is that? And don't be surprised in the future if you hear other announcements. We've had conversations with the folks at UK about pharmacy school. They've done some work in Louisville with a regional program at Bellarmine University. We've been talking to them about a pharmacy satellite program here in Morehead, and we've made progress on that as well. We are committed to improving the lives of people. If you go back and look at the history of this great university going back to 1887, that's what it's been about. It's been about attracting people that need an education. It's been about us providing that in the best ways that we can. And of course, health education is a central part of our lives. Now, I'd like to spend the rest of my time talking about what's happened to us over the last 6 months and what it means to us today, and then look to the future. Thankfully, this message is not what it might have been as we conceptualized our situation back in December and January. I remember very clearly, Sue and I were sitting in the family room at the house about 10:30 in the evening. I had a call from a colleague who said, "Are you aware that the governor is calling us all together and he's going to tell us he's going to cut the budgets of higher education?" We were all on recess like you were at Christmas. I said, "No, I'm not aware of that." Sure enough, we went down to Frankfurt. We met with the governor and his senior staff, and he told us that he had discovered since taking office just a few weeks earlier that we were in a pretty serious situation. That the Commonwealth of Kentucky had a significant structural imbalance, that the revenue forecasts looking into the new year were dismal, and he was going to have to cut. And one place he was going to cut was higher ed. And at that time, he said the cuts would be 3%. 24 hours later, I had another call a little bit later in the evening from a colleague who said, "Are you aware that the governor is going to announce that the cuts will be 12%? I was flabbergasted. I said, "No, I hadn't heard that good news yet." And I made a couple of other calls, and sure enough. And then the word came down that the problem was so severe that we were going to take an additional 12% cut. Well, as you can imagine, that created great anxiety in the leadership team, and as the word got out to the community through the newspapers and other, it created great anxiety for you, for our people. And I really, I wish there was a way we could have helped overcome that anxiety, perhaps in more ways than we did. Nonetheless, that was the situation. But the good news was that at the end of the year, the cuts weren't as dismal as they might have been. So instead of losing $7.2 million in a 15% reduction, we actually arrived at a 6% reduction, and the cuts at Morehead were about $3.4 million. Someone said in the cabinet when we started the discussion, "I don't believe it'll be 15%. He said, "You know, Wayne, it's like when you go to the doctor and you got a bad infection, they say, "You know, sir, we're really sorry. We're going to have to take off both of your legs." And then you come out of surgery and the doctor says, "You know, you should be really thankful. I only had to take one leg." And I thought about that, and I thought, I don't think that makes me feel better. So while the cuts were only 6%, they were significant for us, and it caused us to be very strategic in our planning this last year. As I look back at these gloomy days and a little bit of discouragement, I recall what Benjamin Franklin said when he noted that when you're finished changing, you're finished. Well, we knew we weren't going to be finished. We had to do some things differently. Fortunately, the General Assembly changed the approach to funding the new budget, and we didn't have to cut higher education to the extent that we thought we would. Our MSU community stepped up in many ways with a willingness to change, to do business differently. The Council on Post-Secondary Education allowed us to become the first public university in Kentucky to adopt a new tuition model based on a per credit hour charge as opposed to the old flat rate model. We did a lot of work on this to validate the approach. We actually were able to convince people that it was a good approach for our students, a fairer way to do business, and lo and behold, the council actually complimented us on the model. That doesn't happen very often. But you might be wondering how are our students going to cope with this? Because if you read the popular press, if you follow the national news, you know rising tuition is a problem across the United States of America. Some believe that the cost of higher education is outstripping the average family's ability to pay, and that indeed it will limit access in the future. Let me share some facts with you about tuition at Morehead State University. First, if you look back at the fall of 2007 and you look at the full-time students that attended Morehead State University, 49% of the full-time students that attended in the fall had their tuition paid for by a grant or a scholarship. Let me say it a different way. 49% of the full-time students on our campus last fall paid no tuition. Now, you don't read that in the press and you don't hear it in the national news, but it's important for you to know that because that is, in fact, what's happening on your campus. In addition to that, if you look at the data from fall of last year, only 15% of the full-time students on our campus paid full tuition. Only 15%. And if you drill down into those numbers, the majority of those students were out-of-state students. And so you'd expect that they would pay more. Also, if you look at our demographics, about 52% of our students are eligible for Pell scholarships. Those are federal scholarships, and they're very good scholarships. In fact, the Congress this past session increased the Pell funding by $440 a year, which will offset the tuition increases that we have provided to the vast majority of our students this year. In fact, they'll actually come out a little bit ahead. As one of only 3 Kentucky universities that participates in the federal direct lending program, we continue to award student loans without any interruption whatsoever. That's a little tidbit that you might not be aware of, but the way the federal loan programs work, there is a direct lending program. We have participated in that at Morehead from the beginning. And what that means is our financial aid folks are able to work directly with individual students, and money is downloaded immediately to that student once the application is approved. We don't work with private lenders and lending institutions, some of which you've read a lot about in the newspaper, especially the Chronicle of Higher Education in the last year or so, if you followed the issues with graft and corruption in student lending. We're not part of that. There is no dollar shortage here on our campus because we participate in a direct lending program. We also, this last year, worked hard to protect the full tuition scholarships that we award to our students that are so critical to their success. When we award a scholarship to a student this year, next year we will increment that scholarship to cover the cost of increased tuition. When I came here in 2005, we weren't doing that, and our scholarships had really lost a considerable amount of ground. We'd award a scholarship, and 4 years later, with the rising tuition, students were having to pay a significant chunk of money out of their own pocket, and I thought that was somewhat disingenuous. Here's the most important fact to keep in mind with respect to financial aid. Your university is spending about 10% of its total budget to help students through financial aid. So our presidential scholarships, Commonwealth scholarships, alumni scholarships, go down the list. There's about $12 million in the budget, in this fall's budget, that is addressed to those scholarships. Those are dollars that the institution could choose to spend on other things. But we choose to put those dollars into student scholarships to make sure that the best and brightest students who apply to Morehead State University can come. As for the new budget, we spent countless hours as a cabinet in working with folks across the campus to minimize the impact that the reductions would have on our core business and on our vision. I said to our people when we started, we've got to keep our eye on the vision and on the mission of the university. Our vision is to become the best public regional university in the South. Our mission's well articulated in our strategic plan. And our values, the first of which says people come first and should be encouraged to achieve their potential. And so we started our work with all of that clearly in the framework, the lens through which we were looking. We have a good business plan. I don't know if you've taken time to read it. It's available, it's online, but it describes Morehead State University's internal challenge to meet the state-mandated goal of becoming a state where we have the same number of baccalaureate holders as the national average. We have a long way to go in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. In fact, at our university, we will have to increase the number of graduates from about 1,100 a year to to about 17, almost 1,800 a year by 2020 if we're to do our part. Some would say, the cynics would say, it's not possible. I would say it is possible, and we're going to work hard to achieve that, and we have strategies outlined in this document to do it. So if you're not familiar with it, I would encourage you to look at it. We were pretty appreciative of the hundreds of the students, the faculty, the staff, the alumni, the parents that wrote letters to our senators, our representatives, the governor's office during this last session and said, you know, you got to take care of education, K-12 and higher education. We will not improve as a state if we don't educate our people. A fact in the Commonwealth of Kentucky today, if you look at a cohort of 9th graders and you follow them through to the 12th grade, only 6 of those 10 students will graduate from the 9th grade. And that doesn't take into account the leaks in the pipeline before you ever get to the 9th grade, and there's some significant leaks in that pipeline. That's not a recipe for the 21st century. It's not a recipe for economic vitality. It's not a recipe for better lives for our citizens, and we've got to address those issues. We survived this legislative session, but it wasn't without pain. We worked with budget unit level managers. We asked each of the vice presidents to look within their unit budgets and to identify areas where we could be more effective and more efficient, where we could reorganize, where we could eliminate, but we did not take any across-the-board approach. We were very strategic in our approach. The question was always, if you take these cuts, can you continue to address the needs of the institution? Can we continue on our quest to be the best regional public university in the South? Can we continue to address the issues of our most important stakeholders, our students and our employees? And I think the answer to that is a resounding yes. The way we got to that, of course, is we eliminated 37 positions. We did some other things. 13 of those were faculty positions. A few of those were tenure-track positions, and there were 24 staff positions. All but 4 of those positions had people in them. Only 4 of those positions had people in them. That's tragic indeed for those 4 people. But again, we were pretty strategic where we made those cuts. Several units have been reorganized. You will hear later in the semester that we are going to continue reorganization, and that's okay, it's appropriate, it's what we need to do. We've created a phased retirement program as an incentive for our senior-most faculty, but we recognize in the process that when you lose senior faculty, you lose some very important assets. And so this program allows faculty, based on the needs of the institution, to come back for a period of up to 4 years, working half-time, and continue to contribute to the teaching or the research mission of the institution. Our first core value that you'll find in the strategic plan is that people are our highest priority. And I hope as you examine what we did this last year, you'll recognize that that value permeated everything that we did. Perhaps our greatest achievement in this budget was that even through this very difficult time, we were able to provide each of our full-time employees with a $1,000 pay raise added to the base salary. At the listening sessions this summer, I asked the people in both of those sessions, how many of you thought you'd get any pay raise this year? And there wasn't a hand raised in the audience either time. And that was understandable given what we were facing. However, the value was to try to take care of people the best we could, so we were able to do that. The across-the-board increase in the faculty promotions and staff reclassifications and the implementation of the second year of the Siegel study to allow for more competitive salaries for our staff amounted to $2.1 million, a pretty significant chunk. About 60% of the new revenue in this budget was allocated back to our people, to you and to others. I hope that shows you where our priorities are. Some of you have said you don't know what the Siegel study is about, and so I want to just share a concept or two with you. We hired a national firm 2 years ago to look at the staff classification system and the salary structure to see whether or not it was competitive within this region. They came back with their findings, and they determined that the classification system was about 23% underfunding those positions. And so we elected to develop a 3-phase approach to addressing that issue. by increasing the salaries of starting employees in the classification system. Last year, we increased those salaries by 8%. In this budget, an additional 8%. And next year, we'll do the third phase, which will be an additional 8%. I want you to know that as we have tried to take care of our people, that when we did the across-the-board pay raise, those persons who are paid the least on our staff received the largest increases. They also got the equivalent of $1,000 across the board, but for many of them it was an hourly increase of 50 cents an hour. Now, I don't know how you feel about it, but I hope you feel like I do. I don't think I could support a family on $18,000, $19,000, or $20,000 a year. My goal is to raise the bottom up as quickly as we can, and we've done that. We've worked on that each year that I have been here. We have two groups of employees, some of whom may be here this morning, I hope would be very proud of the fact that after doing two national requests for proposals, one for the bookstore and one for our institutional, the folks that do our cleaning and facilities management, we received a number of top quality proposals from national firms that looked at the possibility of outsourcing both of those enterprises. And based on the quality of what we're doing at Morehead State University and the quality of our people, there wasn't enough difference in what these external firms could do to make it feasible for us to outsource either of those. So the bookstore will continue to be self-operated, and in facilities management, custodial services will continue to be self-operated. Now, we did learn some things in those proposals where we can probably be more efficient and perhaps a little more effective, and those teams of people will work hard, I'm sure, at trying to bring those same kind of efficiencies to our university. The evaluation committees in both cases said we need to continue to do this work. Our institution was also impacted by other changes that were necessitated by budget decisions. For example, we have delayed the replacement of MAP computers, put them on a 4-year cycle instead of a 3-year cycle. It's not the end of the world. Most of these machines after 3 years continue to run well, and so we were able to garner some one-time money by delaying for a year that cycle. We eliminated the tuition waiver for employee families at the graduate level while preserving it for your family members seeking undergraduate degrees. However, I've corresponded recently with one of our faculty about this issue because it appears to me we haven't been very clear in our communication and on our website about this, and so I'm going to ask our folks to delay the implementation of that until January. We did look at the amount of money we were spending to support our public schools with free classes, and upon analysis we have reduced the number of classes we're going to offer free in the public schools, but essentially we're still providing a good service to our regional high schools. Students that are seniors in high school can take up to 2 classes free in their senior year. We've also eliminated, we had 2 large tour buses in our fleet. We've eliminated those and we're going to charter service. The buses were in bad shape. They needed to be replaced. The cost of replacing a bus like that, a good used bus, was $600,000 or $700,000, and we just didn't think in this fiscal climate that was a prudent expenditure. Madonna mentioned the campus parking situation. What I want to say about that is that since the time I arrived on this campus and visited each of the 20 academic departments and every other unit on this campus, a theme that I've heard over and over again is parking on this campus is lousy. Can't we improve it? Well, you've seen what we've done on this campus over the last 25 or 30 years. We buy houses, knock them down, and add more blacktop. How much of that do we want to do? The way to solve the problem structurally is for us to build some parking garages. They're in the campus master plan, but we have no way currently to fund that activity. The Commonwealth provides no money to institutions to build parking garages. They have to be self-funded. So the new parking program, the increase in the fee structure, is designed specifically to address that issue. We will garner those dollars, put them into an auxiliary enterprise, and over the next several years we'll have enough money to begin to plan to build 2 parking garages on this campus. My goal would be to have the first one built in 5 years and the second one within the next 5 years. No one likes to pay more, and I know that. And I apologize for the inconvenience, but I don't apologize for what we're trying to do. I see it as a direct response to something that you asked me to do. You perhaps didn't anticipate the manner in which it was going to be done. Despite the tension and the anxiety caused by this budget, there have been many positive developments this year for our institution. And I always want to be optimistic with you because I'm an optimistic person, and I believe life is good each and every day, and I believe this is a very, very good institution that's going to get better. Let me share some of these positives with you. We recruited another incoming freshman class with better grades and higher ACT scores and higher composite ACT scores than we expected. This fall, again, we expect the ACT composite to be inching up a few tenths, probably around 21.3. Now, when I came here in 05, the ACT composite on this campus was 19.7. I'm not taking credit for the increase. What I'm saying is because of the good work of you, our recruiting folks, our admissions people, changes we've made in admissions practices, we're attracting some better students. Al Baldwin and his team, working with the governor's scholars, have had a dramatic impact on that number, because if you can bring to campus 50 or 60 or 70 governor's scholars who are at the top of the ACT profile, that greatly helps. And guess what? They bring their friends. So we're making progress in that regard. We implemented this fall the new admission standards. The admission index is 450. Basically, that requires an ACT composite of 18 and a high school GPA of 2.7. What that did, though, is that if you look at the ACT profile from high to low, what you realize is we dropped off the bottom 100 students in that profile. These were students that our data would clearly show had very little prospect of graduating from Morehead State University. In fact, they're some of the students that have been pretty challenged going to college. And so we're not saying we don't want them. We are saying there are other educational opportunities for these students. I hope they'll choose the community college, and if they can be successful there, we certainly would want them to transfer to Morehead State. Last year, we had our highest fall enrollment in 5 years at 9,100 students. The folks in the enrollment services area are predicting we'll do better than that this fall. Right now, the numbers are looking pretty strong. I don't want to make predictions because I've been around long enough to know it's not who registers, it's who shows up. So we'll see. But the numbers right now look pretty good. Again, this last year, we were recognized by U.S. News and World Report in their rankings as a top-tier university in the South. You know, the cynic says, that's nothing but a beauty contest. What difference does it make? You know what it makes a difference about? Is our attitude and how we think about ourselves. It helps us think, hey, you know what? James Madison's at the top of that list. I've been to James Madison. Some of you have. It's a pretty good school. They have a different demographic than we do. But I think we can be as good as James Madison. In fact, in some program areas right now, we are as good as James Madison. And so why not all of our programs? We competed even more effectively last year for external grants and contracts with a total estimate of more than $15 million. Plus, we extended the undergraduate research fellowships. I don't know about you, but last year in the spring, when we did the celebration of Scholarship Week, and we had 100+ students over in ADUCT with their posters, standing with their faculty, talking about the research that they had accomplished, you had to be proud. I was proud. And the extension of that program from the basic sciences where it started into music and theater and art and across all the disciplines says this works. And what does it really do? It connects the student to a faculty member who is encouraging that student to become a success. What a great idea, right? You want to improve retention? There's a winning strategy. In addition to the $15 million, I asked Bruce yesterday, what did we do 2 years ago in research and sponsored programs? We increased our number this last year by about $2.5 million. So I know many of you are working hard in trying to stimulate grants and contracts. I know it's hard work. I know it takes a lot of energy. I've written them. It doesn't happen on the first time. It may not happen on a second time. It may not happen on a third time. But if you stay with it, you'll be successful, and I thank you for that. We became the only public institution of higher education this last year to receive a state-funded capital project. I know some of you are interested in what comes out of the big smokestack across the bypass. We burn coal. That's the primary source of energy here for our heating and cooling plant. In March, the year before last, we failed an EPA admissions test and we shut down the heating plant. And this last year, we burned natural gas. We went to the General Assembly and the governor and we said we need some help to rebuild the environmental systems on that heating plant. And we were very fortunate to receive nearly $6 million. So that work is underway and we will be back burning coal this next year. I know coal is controversial, but I can tell you this. We spent 2.5 times more in last year's budget to heat and cool this place than we did the year before. We budgeted $500,000 and we spent $1.5 million to $2 million to do it with natural gas. Natural gas is not the right fuel for a large heating plant such as we have here. But we want to do it right. So the new controls will allow us to burn coal and to do it both efficiently and in an environmentally sensitive way. We established a state-of-the-art molecular biology laboratory in Lappin Hall. The dean, some of the faculty came to me a couple of years ago with the provost. At the time, Mike Bourne said, this is a really important idea. We've got some faculty that believe that we have to have this kind of facility to improve the quality of the scholarship of the faculty, and so we invested some money in it. And we have a state-of-the-art molecular biology laboratory. I'm pleased to say that Dr. Doug Dennis, who's the chair of biology, recently received an individual NIH grant of $200,000, and he has the first postdoctoral fellow working with him. Amanda, where's Amanda? I saw her in here a minute ago. She came in with somebody. Doug said she went back to the laboratory to work. Really pleased. Amanda is a postdoc at UK. She's here with us, and it's just one example of how investing in something can pay dividends for the university. We have many of our undergraduate fellows working with faculty in biology, chemistry, environmental sciences using that laboratory. It's important for us. Working with other institutions, we were able to convince the General Assembly to stabilize the KEYS program. That's the Kentucky Educational Excellence Scholarship Fund, funded with lottery proceeds. That's really important to our kids that come to this institution. At one point, there was a prospect that we'd lose half the money in that program, and actually, they added a little bit to the program, so it's better now than it was. We enhanced our capabilities for serving the region this last year by acquiring the Regional Enterprise Center in West Liberty. It's a place where Krista Barton and her colleagues, working with Kathy Gunn in the College of Education, are reaching out to colleagues across the communities that we serve in education to provide teacher in-service and to help our teachers become better at what they do. We continue to improve emergency communications. You know, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but if we just think back in light of Virginia Tech a year ago, we know how compelling it is to be prepared. I don't think we can ever be confident that we've done everything we need to do, but we're in better shape now than ever. We have an audible alert system on the campus.